Coming up today on Locked On Texas Tech, you thought we were in a no-holds-barred era of college sports, but you ain't seen nothing yet. We're into it next on Locked On Texas Tech.
You are Locked On Texas Tech, your daily podcast on the Texas Tech Red Raiders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We're going to start this thing off right. Raider! Everything runs through Lubbock.
Great to be with you again on Locked On Texas Tech on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, always free and available on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts. And today's episode brought to you by Monopoly Go. I admit it, I've got a competitive side, sometimes to my detriment. I can get a little out of hand. At least that's what I've been told at family reunions. But if you're a big fan of Monopoly Go, what a great way to exercise that competitiveness. The mobile hit twist on classic Monopoly can be yours today. Join your friends, download Monopoly Go for free in the App Store or on Google Play. With the only Chris Level, I'm Casey Cowan. Chris, great to be back with you. One final time from Parts Unknown. We'll be back in the 806 to wrap up the week for the final couple of episodes. So looking forward to getting back to God's country. But one more outside of the 806 here today. And a few things to dive into, man, that are, they're certainly interesting already, but getting even more interesting with each day that passes. If you thought we were already in a no-holds-barred era of college sports, you ain't seen nothing yet. We're going to get into some things on the ease of player movement front as far as some decisions made this week and will be ratified officially, I believe, coming up next Monday. But this ties into the transfer portal, also ties into the opportunity to make cashola off of your name, image, and likeness. So let me just set the table really quickly. If you have not seen what went down earlier in the week, effective immediately now, we'll start with the transfer portal. Division I student athletes who meet certain academic eligibility requirements, like remaining eligible, will be immediately eligible at their next school when they transfer, regardless of whether they have transferred previously. So you had this opportunity to get going immediately on your first transfer, and then previously, if you did it again, there was going to be some consequence to that, but no more. And we are somewhat familiar with this story going back to last season. You have mentioned Raekwon Battle of West Virginia fame, who was a big part of this. We even saw at the end of last football season, A.J. McCarty here in the LBK fit into this category. And they're like, all right, well, I know you had to sit out the entirety of the season, but now you're eligible for the last 15 minutes of it if you'd like to be. So specifically to be immediately eligible after a transfer, undergrad student athletes must have left their previous school academically eligible and in good standing. So it remains the same for graduate transfer student athletes to be eligible just like it has been, but now it's essentially unfettered as far as your opportunity to transfer and then be immediately eligible. And Chris, I got to tell you, just as a fan, there are things that I like about this evolution. There are things that I'm concerned about with this evolution, and we'll dive into it here today. But regardless of how we all feel, this is the way it's going down, and this is effective immediately. So these conversations will begin to happen, just within a matter of, I suppose, days whenever it's officially ratified next week.
And speaking of Parts Unknown, shout out to the missing link back, an 80s wrestler. Google it, people. You'll see he was from Parts Unknown, not to be confused by Mick Foley, who was from Truth or Consequences, New Mexico. But yeah, the missing link, you'll understand when you see a picture that he was, in fact, from Parts Unknown, because it was bizarre. That was taking place in Dallas, Texas. I've had conversations with the head coach, Joey McGuire, about said wrestler and said time frame back in the 80s. So
was that like Sportatorium era or?
Nailed it, man.
Yeah.
Yes, the world-class championship wrestling days back in the mid-'80s, the heyday.
Back when your grandma was sitting on the front row,
yes,
giving the wrestler the finger and going.
Yes, and if somebody got too close, she'd take that purse and go, wow. Yeah, that's right. Maybe a brick in it, maybe not. I don't know. And she would have hit somebody like the missing link from
That's right.
Parts Unknown. Yeah. So yeah. This was expected as far as freedom to move about the cabin, right? We've kind of joked about that before, like Southwest Airlines and all those things. I think the rules really side with the players now. That they are. I think the only caveat here with this new updated rule, and it's going to be crazy to try to remember what the rules are because they've changed so much to the point where there's like, okay, there are rules. Like you could just kind of do whatever you want, right? That's almost the way it seems. But I think with this latest modification, if you will, you have to be in good academic standing, and I think you have to have enough progress toward a degree. And I only mention that because the Red Raiders got into some, whether it was real or not, some bogus trouble, we can call it that, back in the mid 90s with players not having enough progress toward their degree, therefore being deemed ineligible, and all those things. It was more of a basketball thing. But this is also why the NCAA doesn't want to get sued. I think that all it's taking right now is a lawyer to go, hey, man, they won't let you transfer. They won't make you eligible immediately. Like, I got your back. And then it's like the NCAA is like, hey, we were just kidding. You do what you want, And so, right. I mean, this is where we're at. And so what it is, because like some of the stuff going on in the Big 12, like on this very, week, I mean, you've had I think there was a running back that I want to say that just left Colorado that I think came from like Notre Dame back in like December. I think I'm right here. And then there's rumors that he's going to go to Kansas State. So it's like he was going to be in the Colorado spring media guide, but not the fall one. It's just you have a Kansas signee, a running back signee that I think enrolled early. I think I'm right here, who was also a running back. I don't know what it is with this position. And he's like, you know what? I've had enough of Lawrence. I'm getting in the portal. Like, dude, you just got here. Like we signed you. We recruited you. You've been here like 3 or 4 months. You hadn't even seen what winter was like. And he's out the door. But this is now allowed. It's not a got to be a graduate. You don't have to. Well, you already used up your freebie. No, you can do what you want. Again, as long as you've made enough progress toward a degree to where the years stack up. Like you've got after so many semesters, you have to be considered a sophomore. So you can't just take 6 hours a semester and all these things. That's just to dumb it down a little bit. And again, I guess you have to be in good academic standing. Like you can't be failing and all those stuff. But the premise here is if you're Joey McGuire, you're Grant McCaslin, you're Tim Tadlock, the pressure is kind of on to treat your people right, for the collective to treat these players right, because they can leave at any time. And it's also probably why you've seen some college coaches, knowing that this was coming, going, you know what, the NFL isn't so bad. If I can get an assistant spot in the NFL, I think I'm done with all this. I don't want to have to re-recruit my entire team or my entire position group every semester, basically. Which is how many times that there's a portal window. There's going to be one at the end of spring, one at the end of fall, rinse and repeat. So that's why Joey, to me, is like the new age perfect fit for what a head coach in college needs to be. Tons of energy, tons of positivity. He's a truth teller. He keeps it real. And I think those are, that's why he fits in this era. And there's also a conversation to be had, Cowan, about eras in general. We look at history books and you kind of look back and like, well, that's way back when they were running the ball a bunch. That's way in the 2000s, they were throwing the ball all over the place. So stats are skewed and records are skewed and you have to understand the era. This era is like the portal era. How does it get remembered in time? Whenever you're just, it's a completely fruit basket turnover every year with your roster, or can be. It's also while they're playing tug of war in spring games, because it's like I'm not showing you what I got in my back pocket, Like my offensive line is good and there's some depth there, but you're not going to get to see it. We're just going to let him anchor with a big rope tied around him and pull the other guy in a mud puddle. I mean, that's what we're doing, So.
Well, hey, let me tell you, if somebody once upon a time was able to convince themselves that a 40-yard dash made a dam for a defensive lineman, I guarantee you we can get into scouting tug-of-war contests, and just that may be actually a better indicator of what a guy might be in the trenches if you got into a little mud pit tug-of-war action. But yeah, you're right. I mean, it's a different era, and it's going to impact pretty much everything that is involved here. And I think it's kind of interesting, you talk about Joey McGuire being the right kind of coach for this type of era, and talk about the energy and all those types of things. But whenever you get into the truth-telling part of his profile, or the keeping it real part of his profile, that's where I really wonder, like, can you actually, or are you walking on eggshells? I know it would behoove the student athlete to have somebody tell him the truth, obviously, about what, his status is or what his future could be. But I also think there may be coaches out there, and maybe to their detriment. I actually hope that would be the case, but coaches out there that are like pulling some punches because of the fear of, a transfer, or turning a kid off, or souring a relationship. I mean, I guess it can cut both ways, right? You got to have the right individual delivering the message, the right individual receiving the message, maybe for it to really land with maximum benefit. But there's going to be a lot that goes the other way also, I think.
Yeah, and this is why you try to stay true to who you are, and then do it the right way. Because I'll tell you ultimately how this will play out is like, the old saying, real recognize real. Well, like, what's going to happen is when guys start to question things, or they're checking in whether to transfer into a program or out of a program, they're going to talk to their peers. Hey, how is it there? Like, really? Do you think coach is telling me the truth if I'm looking to maybe leave or whatever? And I think that your culture, that's why, still, like, player retention is still going to be one of the biggest things. We're talking about all the moving about the cabin and everything, but player retention is really what ultimately is going to win out in the end. There may be a few exceptions where you have TCU that makes it to the title game when they had a ton of portal entries. Ole Miss has really made a living at this. Colorado is trying to make a living at this. But I would much rather have my guys grow them up, develop them, tweak them, sprinkle some special ingredients from the portal on top, and kind of try to win that way. But I think you're that's why you have to, and that's why Joey's perfect for this job, because he treats whoever's cleaning that office, to the starting quarterback, to his coordinators, to who's booking a flight for him for a recruiting trip. Shout out to Alicia Weatherford and Presley Quisenberry, and Kate, all those folks those sweet ladies that run his office.
That's right. There's no other podcast that is shouting out.
That's what I'm saying.
To the traveling secretary.
But I mean, and I will say today is Professional Administrative Day.
There we go.
I'm just saying, we appreciate you.
That's right.
Yeah, and so I think that's why it's important to treat everybody the same and all that, because you just, it's about culture. And I just think with the ability to kind of go, man, at the drop of a hat, I'm out. I also think, though, that at some point, kids get red flagged. If you just start moving everywhere, it's like, yes, there's a few exceptions like everything else. But if you just have like this, I was at 4 different high schools. This is my third college. Yeah, I'm a junior. At some point, it's like, I don't want anything to do with you, man. Like, you're always looking for the next thing. What are you bringing to me other than, you're like the, you probably know how to move out of your dorm room very quickly and rapidly, and how to set up cable quickly more than the guy that's moving in that had never done this much. But you get what I'm saying. It's
U-Haul knows your name.
Yes. And it's like, what kind of experience are you actually getting as a student athlete if you're just bouncing around all over the place? You're never comfortable in the scheme. Nobody trusts you, or trust is very hard to gain, because it's like, man, he's got one foot out the door already. You ain't even got here yet. That kind of stuff.
Well, so, I'm also, again, just trying to process this as a fan. There's some things I'm conflicted about, because I do think that in some ways, I'm going to miss the era where there was a consequence for you bailing and transferring. And therein lies the incentive to remain committed, because you didn't want to have to, give up that year or wait to get back on the field. So there's that part of it, I guess, all along up till now. I've kind of talked myself into feeling like, yeah, that should be a thing. But as soon as I say that, Chris, here's the question that I get bogged down in and don't have an answer for. First, today's episode brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, and it's playoff time in the NBA and NHL. Baseball's in full swing, and FanDuel is your place to bet on every game. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150, win or lose. And you can bet on everything from slap shots to home runs, slam dunks, and all in between, all on an app that's safe, secure, and easy to use. So what's the holdup? Get in the mix now on all the action by visiting FanDuel.com/lockedon and make your first bet an automatic win with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Here's the question that I get bogged down in and don't have an answer for. It is, why is a student athlete, or why should a student athlete be treated any differently than a coach? Because that's always the comparison we get. Well, your coach can bail, they can leave, they're coaching again immediately. And I don't have an answer for why they should be different. And maybe that is the answer, that they shouldn't be treated differently. But I think there are a lot of fans that feel that way out there, like, or at least student athletes feel that way. Like, why can I not be on the move just like a coach could be on the move? And I don't know. I guess I'm sitting here in 2024, the year of our Lord, just kind of throwing my hands up and saying, okay, I guess actually you shouldn't be treated or categorized differently.
Well,
I don't know. How do you feel about that aspect of it?
Yeah, hashtag America. Like, hey, man, land of the free, home of the brave. I can do what I want, right? Although I think athletes want to be treated like coaches in some ways, but not in others.
Yeah.
And that's why the whole employment thing is really sticky. The revenue sharing thing is really sticky, because if a head coach shows up and he does something that is inappropriate in his contract, that's unprofessional, and like for a student athlete, is that like showing up to a team meeting late? Is that missing class? Hey, it says it right here in black and white, man. And it says we can fine you if you, like an NFL player, like if you're going to show up or not show up for OTAs or whatever that kind of stuff is. And so there's some, it's like yes and no.
Yeah.
I think that, they you like the option of being able to kind of go where you want, but also it's like, I really don't know if I want to be treated like coach in some ways, because he can get fired, and and that means I can get fired. And it's like, I kind of like the NIL situation I've got here, and I'm like the starting, linebacker here, and I don't want to get fired, for just, I just missed a meeting,
Well, I guess that is maybe where we wind up, and we're in the land of extreme accountability. Whether you like it or not, for better or worse, you've got a chance to be processed out just as quickly as the coach could be, quote unquote, processed out. So let us know in the YouTube comments. I'd love to hear from you on that, how you feel about that, because I feel like a lot of times the conversation just breaks down into that kind of area, whether you like it or don't like it. Well, why are these guys categorized any differently than a lot of others in a professional setting? And of course, we're going to have a whole other conversation about professional non-compete clauses and contractual obligations and things like that. And we got an entire summer to have Locked On Texas Tech conversations, so maybe we'll get into that on another episode someday. But before we move on, I wanted to get to this other aspect of this latest ruling. This has to do with name, image, and likeness monetization. So basically facilitating and non-facilitating NIL opportunities. The way this one reads is schools can now identify NIL opportunities and facilitate deals between student athletes and those third parties. Student athletes, of course, not obligated to accept assistance from those that they're being like pointed to or things like that. But you will be permitted now to increase NIL related support not monetary support, but say infrastructure or directional support for those student athletes who are going to be disclosing their NIL arrangements. So basically you can, if I'm understanding it correctly, point someone to a collective, point someone to a business owner that's a supporter or whatever. And still at the end of the day, I guess we're thinking that that's not the university facilitating NIL deals, but in some ways it is. So this one to me, Chris, is a little easier to swallow because I just feel like it's kind of pulling back the curtain. You know, it's just transparency on essentially what's already happening and what was always bound to happen. You know, like an example I remember early on in the NIL era was for, I think this was in Ann Arbor, Michigan, an apparel store who had an official Michigan licensing agreement where they could use the maize and blue and they can sell jerseys and all these things. And they're doing NIL deals with student athletes. Meanwhile, Joe Blow down the street, who's got an apparel store but doesn't have that licensing agreement, is not getting quite as many because, well, he's not an officially licensed partner or something like that. And I felt at that time, and this is like, 2, 3, 4 years ago, okay, well, isn't that sort of in a roundabout way the university kind of facilitating or pointing to a better option? So I always kind of felt like this was inevitable, that it was going to be happening. And now I suppose I'm just kind of glad as a fan that maybe they're pulling the curtain back and saying, yes, this is what a school can do.
Yeah, because like I think this is right, and you have to be careful about talking these things. But I think this is right. I think like right now, a coach at a school or an administrator at a school can't say, "Hey, we'd love for you to go to school here and play for us and all those things. And let's take you over and introduce you to the folks at the Matador Club. And like, let's, and this is our official, but it's almost like, would that meeting eventually happen in whatever college town in the country? Okay. I'm just inserting our stuff here. And I think they couldn't really say that. They couldn't be involved and all those things, which is so stupid. Yeah. And so now that you can go, I think, on the record and like a part of your, like, yes, hey, here's who handles that for our university, and here's who they are. I'd like to introduce you to Mr. and Mrs. Matador Club right here, that kind of thing, and all that stuff. And so this is a no-brainer. It's breaking down some walls that really didn't need to be there. It's like, hey, we wanted more of an open floor plan here. Okay, well, you're about to get it. And it's semantics in some ways, but yeah, it's just because I think what they see, the more transparent and the more, because what a lot of colleges, schools, and all that, they want as much transparency as possible, because everybody's hearing these rumors of what some kid is getting paid or what the payroll is of some team, and you don't know what's real or not. And you feel like, okay, did so-and-so bid against themselves here? Did they just buy it hook, line, and sinker because they felt like these other three schools were going to pay this much for his? I mean, however you want to phrase that, whatever semantics you want to get into and hypotheticals you want to get into, that's why schools, coaches, programs, administrations, all that, they want more transparency here. And I think this allows for some of that, at least, not everything. But because if I was the IRS, I'd want full transparency on what everybody was getting and how and why and all that stuff, like the rest of us. So anyway, I think you're kind of slowly working toward that. It's just wild to me how many things change so quickly. Whereas like you feel like it took moving heaven and earth when we'd have a massive, a rule change, a portal window change, or a scheduling change, or whatever it would be in college football. It's like it would take over a full off season. Like, I mean, now it's like, okay, well, what changed today? What changed this week? If it's just like drinking from a fire hose, man.
Yeah, I guess, I don't know. Do we just trace it back to the COVID era? Because, it used to be like years in the making or centuries in the making to get things to change.
I think they can't keep up with it. I think that it's all moving and adjusting so fast litigation is all happening, that they're like, yeah, we just do what you want, man. I mean, yeah, like we'll pass it, sure. And you're trying to keep up. It's changing so fast, and so yeah. But it's just like, I mean, I don't even think we'll be able to document how many rules have been changed, tweaked, or whatever in the last 2 or 3 years. It's just hard to follow the timeline of it. Much less realignment, much less college football playoff, much less TV contracts and lawsuits when schools are suing conferences and athletes are suing the NCAA, and the NCAA's like, hey man, King's Eds, I didn't do nothing. Y'all do what you want, So
yeah, it was like the original era. We really cared about a lot of these things. Maybe it's like the firstborn child. Like, hey, don't you go past the stop sign at the end of the block. And then like the third child comes along and you're like, hey, run to the store and give me a gallon of milk and a carton of Marlboros.
The fourth child is going to another county.
Yeah. I hope they stay there. Is probably what the parent is saying by that point in time. Things change, I suppose, and things change very, very quickly all of a sudden now within the world of college sports. And speaking of change, before we get out of here, man, I just wanted to dive into this really quickly because we've had some questions fashion-wise within the YouTube comments. First, today's episode brought to you by Monopoly Go. And we've all been there, either as a player or a fan. It's halftime of the big game and the scoreboard's not looking too good. You're feeling low. You're not sure you or your team are going to be able to pull out a win. And that's when you dig deep, lift your head up and say to yourself, it's time to get back in the game and take as much of my friends' money as I possibly can. And you can do just that with the smash hit mobile game Monopoly Go. Monopoly Go lets you compete with your friends to get the most riches and the biggest empire. It's the Monopoly you love, but on your phone, anytime, with tons of new twists, including leaderboards to compare your progress to your buddies and tell them all about it whenever you're kicking their butts. You can also play on countless dynamic Monopoly boards, make your friends bankrupt by smashing their landmarks with a wrecking ball, or charge other players rent for your iconic properties. You can even work with your friends to crack open community chests and in tournaments to get extra rewards and climb the leaderboard. So get back out there, put on your game face, and download Monopoly Go today for free in the App Store or on Google Play. Today's episode brought to you by Gametime, and you shouldn't have to sweat it out when buying tickets to your favorite events, and with Gametime, you never will, because it's always a breeze using the Gametime app, where you're going to find killer last-minute deals, views from every seat, and their lowest price guarantee. Gametime has deals on tickets right up to the start of the event, and even an hour after it begins if you get a little distracted at the tailgate. That means Gametime is the place to find last-minute seats to any event. Also, the fastest and easiest way to buy tickets. Not just fast, however, also secure and simple to use. So right now, download the Gametime app and create an account and use the promo code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem our code LOCKEDONCollege, LOCKEDONCOLLEGE, Locked On College, for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today for last-minute tickets at the lowest price, guaranteed. Couple of Red Raiders out there, and probably more than a couple, have been asking, when do we have an opportunity to dive in on a new Red Raider wardrobe? Now, I don't know that we have the answer as to when this will be on the rack or on the shelf at your favorite Texas Tech outlet, wherever that may be. But I guess just around the corner, and I would suppose, Chris, that corner is on the other side of these sports calendars, all concluding, which we're still a little bit away from, obviously, with some that are still in action. But the three-stripe army is just out there lingering on the horizon. Actually saw a picture yesterday from our guy, Robert Giovanetti. You know him, right?
I do. Very.
And he tweeted out a picture from somewhere, parts unknown, I guess I'll say for Gio as well. It was an Adidas welcome graphic on the wall, and Texas Tech's logo was there along with some others, Georgia Tech, Arizona State, Louisville, Miami, North Carolina State, and some other Adidas schools, obviously. So people getting excited about a picture, just like I was. You can check it out on Locked On Texas Tech's Twitter page at Locked On Tech if you have not seen that. And you want to get fired up for a simple graphic. It's fun to do this time of year. But what are you hearing about some actual timelines when you kind of get, I guess, into a transition, assuming that it is going to be after these seasons have concluded?
Yeah, and I'd be willing to bet you that Robert was at a conference or something. But I think that that this is Texas Tech is going to have to learn how do we market, brand it, how does the parent company want us to acknowledge said brand and being a part of the Adidas family and the Three Stripe Army and all the different things. What's kosher, what's not, all the things, because this is a new. I mean, geez, Calvin, you've been with Under Armour since what was it, like 03, 04? I mean,
Man,
so
has it been that long? Yeah.
Was it 18, 20 years or something? I have to go back and look at the specific number of years, but no, this is a long. You've been wearing the UA for a long time, and I think new times are ahead. Like this particular weekend, Texas Tech is having a big, like garage sale, and it's going to just basically clear out a lot of the Under Armour stuff. And so if you're, if you want anything, like, whether it was game worn or some of that gear, I mean, it's just kind of a, hey, have at it for probably pretty good price. Most of the retailers in town have already kind of done the clearance on that. And guess what? Adidas is moving in. I can tell you from a high school standpoint, that Adidas will be readily available for all high schools in the Lubbock area, from a coaching, gear standpoint to like uniforms to, and they've kind of been non-existent, but not anymore, because this is going to be like a whole wave of just, branding, and just kind of this city is going to be an Adidas city, like it has been an Under Armour city for a good long in this part of the state, honestly. And Mr. Mahomes has the most to do with that. I think that's why this is what will be told stories, whether it be shortly after this becomes official, which it is official, but like when it takes effect on July 1, and then after, how much he had involvement with. But like I'm telling you right now, even he's like directly involved on, I like this, I want this done. And the Adidas people are basically going, yes, sir, Mr. Mahomes. and it's like, for Texas Tech, it's like unbelievable that you've got like the ultimate ace in your hand, because he cares, he's invested, he feels like that this is what he's doing to help his school. There's NIL money involved here. But whenever he talks to those top execs, and it's like, I want this idea, or push this, let's get this sped up. I mean, they're all like, you got it, man, because he's the face of sports in so many ways in this country, and of the most powerful league. He's the best player in said league, with just, Super Bowl trophies, plural, and MVPs and all that stuff. And it's like, they would like to keep him happy. I know that's a shocker. And so this is what he wants. And so guess what? You're going to be treated very, very well. And I think that if something isn't right or whatever, they will make it right. All it takes is a call from Mr. Mahomes.
Have you heard? I know you're talking about like high schools and coaching staffs and things like that. Anything on the podcaster front? Any gear readily available? Because I'd love to have a tracksuit. I'm not really thinking about it from like an athletic standpoint, because I wear cowboy boots every day, but I'm thinking about it more like a New Jersey standpoint, so I can use the word gabagool. If I could get like a gold chain and maybe
I mean, when I was going on one of those basketball trips, I had like a quarter zip with the three stripes and the Adidas, and I forgot what you call me, like you're like, I look like a German mobster. I can't
Latvian hitman. I think.
There you go. Yes,
Armenian hitman. Yeah.
Yes, there you go. Like we've seen in all the movies.
There's something tough about it,
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Okay. Well, we'll wait and see on that front, but it's just around the corner, so make sure you're clearing space within your closet, because we're probably just a few months away. All right, good stuff, man. Appreciate the insight and your thoughts as always, and would love to hear from those out there in the YouTube comments on any of the above. No holds barred transfer portal. How you feeling about that? And should a student athlete be categorized differently than a coach or any other professional? Give us some reasons as to why, or or why not? Chris, I'm looking forward to being back in the 806, and I'll still be smiling Thursday and Friday. I know that because I always enjoy my time on Locked On Texas Tech, man. So we'll see you then for the next episode.
And go be nice to an administrative professional out there today. I mean, take care of them, be nice to them. They make the world go round. They make offices go. Shout out to those over in Joey's office again. But
right.
Yeah, 3-Stripe Army coming up soon. But that's going to do it for us. Make sure you subscribe, like Cowan always says. Comment. We'll get into some of those comments on these shows and all those things. We certainly appreciate everybody being a part of this show as it continues to grow. And we're getting closer to what a year and a half now we've been doing this.
I think so. It'll be 2 years. September 1, I believe.
That's right. They've kept us around, so
That's
hopefully we've borrowed another day. We fooled them again.
We are keeping this athletics department afloat. Let me tell you. Let's all get these dots connected. And we'll get to rolling. And I should mark this date, by the way, or actually a date, I suppose, 3 days ago, since we're talking 3 stripes. We're talking Patrick Mahomes. I don't know if you saw this noted, but the 11-year anniversary of April 21, 2013 came and went just a few days ago when Patrick Mahomes tweeted a picture of him and the legendary Cliff Kingsbury saying, "I just committed to Texas Tech." So that's where it all started. Shout out to Mr. Mahomes. All right, Chris, appreciate the time as always, and appreciate you guys for being out there. Get subscribed on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts so you never miss an episode, and we hope to see you back for the next round on Locked On Texas Tech.